This is the Final Word Cricket podcast, season 18, episode 17. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon with you. We're in the Earls, London and Lisbon. Jeff will be joining me in the UK next week for the World Test Championship final, which is only 8 days away at time of recording. A massive week in global cricket, and indeed a massive week in our world on the basis of the Glenn Maxwell retirement and the episode that we were able to do yesterday, which we will back over in just a moment. Other retirements as well. The IPL final, which will be segment 3 tonight. We'll explain how we're doing that in a little bit. We've had the England Lions playing India A. We've had ticket sales for the Ashes later this year. We've had England's women. We've had England's men playing one-day cricket against the West Indies. We've had the Blast return. Plenty more still. Hello, Jeff.
Hello. Good morning. Good day. Whatever time it is. I don't know. They always tell us when you're doing the over by over on The Guardian, don't say good morning because it's not morning for some people. And that is true. But you can always do it sort of Truman Show style. You know, if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Or if it happens to be those things for you right now, all of those things, why not? Here we are.
Yep. Well, it's good night to Glenn Maxwell's one-day career, so maybe we should just start there because it was it was one of those things where for about 48 hours it was the only thing I was doing because we had, of course, the interview which we had in the can, but then getting that ready and all of the backgrounding and whatnot to get that out there into the world and collaborating with CA, who were excellent to work with on that, and of course Glenn being so brilliant in telling his own story and as he does so well when he comes on the final words. So, yeah, thanks for those who said nice things and sent through messages and shared social media posts and all that kind of jazz. But, I sort of felt the most moving part of the whole interview from listening back to it was when he talked lovingly about the Mumbai Miracle, the 201 not out, and knowing that like he has that forever now. And now that the career's over and we're not looking into the future, it's now a backward looking thing. And he's got a moment that will endure as the finest innings ever played in the history of a format that goes back to 1971. He did plenty more too. But, you know, when you look at things in totality, you look at the big moments and, what a joy that he had that thing.
And there's always speculation about the future of 50-over cricket, but even if it does become something that's eventually part of the past, it's something that will have had that long span of time when it was such a significant format in the game. And if you can be someone who's walked away with probably the best innings played in that format, it's hard to see anybody topping that. I like that framing. I think maybe he came to that framing partly through some of the conversations that we had with him, a couple of the live shows that we did, where I think we put it to him in that context that, you know, the players with long careers might get a moment or a couple of moments, the things that they're remembered for, and hopefully they're for good rather than, you know, some players get remembered for quirky curiosities. But the players who are fortunate enough have a great moment or a couple of great moments, and then, you know, the all-time top of the tree players might have a few of those great moments when everything worked for them and everything came off. And that was the way that we spoke about it with him, was that you get to be one of those players. You get to join that rank of players who have genuinely great, memorable moments that somebody can mention in 50 years and somebody will still remember it. You know, you don't need to say much more than Maxwell 201 probably, and anybody who was alive and watching cricket at this point in time will probably know what that means in 50 years' time. So that part of it, like I'm glad that he's able to walk away from the format with that appreciation that he did get to have such a rare experience.
Yeah, and look, he's not overly statistically minded about himself. He is about other things, but the fact that he fell one game short of 150, which was talked about and got a lot of coverage, and 10 runs short of 4,000. But we did talk about it before he formally retired, and he was sort of weighing up, not about whether he'd retire or not, but that statistical quirk that had they made it through to the next game in the Champions Trophy, he would have hit 150, but it didn't happen, and that's fine. But
pointless number anyway.
Well, yeah, but his career more generally isn't really defined by numbers. It's more by moments.
No,
and
it's only strike rate. The career strike rate number is one that I watched the whole way through his career because, for so long he was top of the pops, and then Andre Russell got past him at one point, but he's the only player who did of anybody with a sample size worth considering. So. That doesn't seem as unusual now in the T20 era, but when he started, it was such an outlier. Nobody was striking above 100 in one-day cricket, let alone in the 120s, high 120s, where Maxwell was. So he was genuinely all on his own for that first probably 5, 6 7 years of his Australian career before other players started saying, like Heinrich Klaasen and so on, coming in and saying, well, okay, we need other players to do the kind of thing that Maxwell does. He was out there all on his own.
Yeah, I described it in one of the radio interviews I did to back in the stuff yesterday. He was like half a generation ahead, not a full generation. He's not like 15 years ahead of his time or anything, but he might, maybe 5 years in terms of the way he was able to do things in 50-over cricket that, as you rightly say, weren't quite being done then. They are being done now, but he was the pioneer of sorts in terms of being able to rebalance the risk-reward rubric or something like that in such a way that he was able to do those remarkable things. So, yeah, grateful, of course, that he came to us and wanted to do that interview that way and release it that way. So that was pretty cool, and demonstrates that relationship that we've had over time and that friendship too. So, yeah, that's in the rear vision mirror for us now. Of course, Glenn will continue as a T20 player, and he's pretty open about wanting to go to the T20 World Cup next year and continue to sort of specialise as a T20 player on the domestic circuit and that type of thing. So, well, not that he hasn't specialised in it before, but you know what I mean. He won't be playing 50-over cricket, and I don't imagine he'll be playing any 4-day stuff. You couldn't rule it out with Glenn. I joked earlier that I wouldn't be entirely surprised if at age 41 he bobs up playing county cricket, because that's just the way he is, right? He's a cricket guy, and he loves playing red ball cricket. And if his body allowed him to, I can sort of see him doing a stint as a senior pro.
If his leg wasn't falling off, there's no way he'd be retiring now.
Ever.
That's clear that he'd still be playing one-day cricket if he thought he could get through it. I think it's people still underestimate, and maybe not if they've read the book, but the extent of the damage that he did to his leg and how, when it happened, we thought career-ending injury, and in a way it is. It's just he managed to buy a couple of years through insanely hard work, but eventually it's been too much of an obstacle to overcome. The pain and the swelling that he goes through just on a match-to-match basis, just trying to get that leg right. So it's had a vast effect. It has curtailed his career. It happened to set off the chain of events that led to the all-time great innings, but that was another question that we asked him. You get to play this all-time great innings and be remembered, but it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't broken your leg. Would you make the trade if you could go back and change it? And he was like, if I could avoid that injury, 100%.
Yeah.
He's like, you have no idea how painful it was and is and has been and will continue to be. So he's living with that for the rest of his life.
You mentioned Heinrich Klaasen before. That's the start of our agenda for today, because coincidentally he's retired within a few hours of Glenn, and they're the two highest strike rates in one-day history. So for
just like Maxwell, not quite as fast.
Yeah, so Maxi 127, Klaasen 117. If you were wondering, that was a little gem from Dan Cherney on Twitter last night. But yeah, there is the Klaasen one's far more complex than the Maxwell one, right? So he didn't get a central contract earlier this year. He'd already retired from Test cricket. It just does feel like cricket, South Africa and Heinrich Klaasen have played a bit of a game of chicken here. He's only 34. He did play in the Champions Trophy as a non-contracted player, but he's going full-time into the T20 league. So his one-day career is an extraordinary one in a much smaller sample size. That 174 from 83 balls against Australia a couple of years ago, his highest score. But this kind of goes to what Shukri Conrad's been saying in the last few weeks since he's taken over as the all-format coach, that he's basically had enough of the bullshit with the mix and match T20 domestic leagues versus playing for your country. He wants people to be fully committed to playing for South Africa, and their domestic T20 commitments to sit around that. And Klaasen, absent a national contract, has said, stuff it, I'm off. And that's sad, because he's still got plenty more to offer as a player not a million miles outside that Maxwell mould.
Yeah. I just want to clarify my stat before, because I did say Andre Russell went past him. That's not if you go by 1,000 balls faced. So Andre Russell faced 794 balls and snuck past Maxi with 126 to 130. So for those people who are jumping up and down about the stats, but on 1,000 balls faced is a fair sample size. Maxwell the fastest. Yeah, the Klaasen one's interesting, and we spoke about Shukri Conrad's comments on the show a few weeks ago, and I like that he's being bullish. I like that he's taking it up to much more powerful forces. I don't know that it's going to end that well for him, as people who take it up to more powerful forces often tend to find out. So I respect the fact that he's got the chutzpah to do it. I'm not sure if it, at some point, I suspect there's going to have to be backing down to some extent from it, or we already have seen a little bit of that with South African availability for the pre-game stuff for the World Test Championship and so on. So there's going to at best be some sort of compromise position is going to still have to be taken. But it's just the thing that strikes me most is how unfortunate it is. Heinrich Klaasen, it felt like leading into that 2023 World Cup and in the early stages of it, before Maxwell went absolutely nuts in the Dutch game and then the Afghanistan game, that patch before that, it felt like Heinrich Klaasen was the most dangerous striker in the world at that stage. And I mean, there was a point in South Africa in, I think it was 2018, it might have been the India jaunt before Australia went over there for that series, when Klaasen was bobbing into that side and tearing things apart, and then sometimes not getting picked because he was the keeper, but he wasn't the first choice keeper, and there were all of these things where he was on the edges of South African selection. And I remember being mystified by it then, having watched him play a bit. I was thinking, how the hell is this guy not first choice every game for what he can do with the bat alone? And now you've got a situation where he pulls the pin on South Africa with a far more modest career than it should have been. It's shades of Kyle Abbott, who you spoke to a few weeks ago, where you've got a player whose quality is such that he should have played 300 times for South Africa. And it just is frustrating from a standpoint of the player getting the satisfaction of a full bore career, and the spectators, the followers, getting the satisfaction of watching that player be all that they could be. Is that we didn't see him be all that he could be. We saw his heights, but we didn't see them extended over a long period of time. Yeah,
so 61 days and 58 T20 internationals. Yeah, and the other part that there are parallels with Maxwell in as far as his first class career is very strong, average of 46. He had that 292. He made it better than a run of ball as his highest first class score. But only played 4 test matches. There's some similarities with Maxwell playing 7. I wonder in sort of 5 or 10 years' time, we mentioned these players who are half a generation before their time, whether test cricket is better at absorbing that kind of... I'm sure it will be. I have actually no doubt that as white ball cricket evolves and as red ball cricket recedes in some respects, that there'll be better opportunities for players to integrate that way. But not quite the timing for these two.
I think it's telling that in that T20 World Cup final, that South Africa-India final, where and you spoke with Lawrence Booth about Bumrah's performance and that nobody but Bumrah can win it from there. The flip side of that is that I think that while Klaasen is there, South Africa are winning it.
Absolutely.
That's how it felt watching it. That's how it felt commentating it at the time. It felt like as long as he plays, everyone's South Africa are fine. He was the linchpin, even though he wasn't the most experienced player in the team. He was the player who everything depended on.
Before we move off, I guess, this long and winding introduction kind of via the Maxwell bit, I just wanted to say that when we have high-profile moments, it'd be remiss of us not to talk about our commercial partnerships, and that's where we're at right now. Looking to partner up with a commercial partner, to repeat that word, for the England-India Test match series. Make it you. We do a lot for our commercial partners through any given year, especially during high-profile series. I'd be staggered if this doesn't go down as our most downloaded series yet, for a variety of reasons. We always have our upward trend, but you throw in the mix England summer against India, the extra emphasis on that, and the fact that England are coming to Australia later in the year, and added focus on how they're going to perform down under. It's a great combination for us, and we have this extraordinary community behind us as well, who we love, and having that complemented by commercial partners like Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, who are Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. They're the series sponsor overarching in Series 18. But for those England-India dailies, send me a line, or drop me a line, adam@finalwordcricket.com, and let's do a deal. We would love to work with anyone who, and look, there are obviously types of brands that we don't work with. We've never worked with a gaming company or a gambling agency or crypto or NFTs or any of that kind of jazz. We're not going to work with an arms dealer, but within reason, we're open-minded. So this is the time to get in touch, and let's get you on every single inch of the final word through that England-India series. And just on our community, I thought it was worth mentioning, Jeff, that you get a sense of how strong the Final Word crew is. We've once again had our Lord's Taverners fundraising target for the Edinburgh Marathon Festival supported by one donor. So we fell a little bit short. I don't know exactly how far it was. We didn't quite get to 30.
By
and
about 4. Yeah, we were like 26 and a half or something.
I think we managed to get to within 3 and a bit of it in the end. There was a few offline donations, and we've ended up with. I don't know whether to say his real name, Jeff. I haven't spoken to him about this donation as yet. But correspondence
I think we can go screen. I was
going to say his screen name.
Otherwise,
so the brown bear, Ursus Arctos, who lives in America. We've met him before. He kindly sent through an email last night saying, you guys did so well. He was so inspired by what Hayley did, which we described on the show last week, running the haggis, that he's chipping in the rest, which is just amazing. And
amazing. Yeah.
You don't get that unless you've got a community that is solid and stable and enduring. And that's what we've got after 10 years of the final word. So thank you so much to the Brown Bear. You're a great man. Cannot wait to speak with you soon. And it does mean that we have reached our 30,000 target for the Lord's Tavern in 2025.
That feels good. I was anxiously tracking those numbers over that last week or so after the marathon. So it's very cheering to hear that the final bit came through, and that everybody's efforts over that period have been rewarded in that way. So well done, everybody. Thank you, and particularly I'm glad that money's going to help so many people who will need it over the next year until we come around to Edinburgh again. Some of the reports we've had about what they'll be able to do with that amount of cash are remarkable. I think we've now funded the Wickets program for the next 7 years over the 3 years we've done Taverners funding, which is, you get that gives you a sense of what charitable donations can do when concentrated into individual programs. That's in Scotland where we've been running the event. So we're very proud of that. So, continue to want to do great things where we can on that front, but also partner up for that series. Adam@finalwordcricket.com. Jeff, the first test match in our run of dailies, though, is the World Test Championship final. We've already had the first one in our run of dailies.
That's true. We did have England Zim. England Zim did run, but what feels like as we reset and go again through June, July, the middle part of the year.
It was a 3-day entree. It was It was a horse duver. Horse duver. As I like to call them.
Yes. Now the horse duver's over. The WTCF, as no one calls it apart from me, begins on the 11th of June. Andrew McDonald did a pretty good interview, I thought, on SEN last week, where he basically confirmed Green's playing. He described him as a utility. He can go anywhere, and they know that. The position that's unclear, so they've confirmed Smith at 4. That's right. Andy Gow's in the back of the footy card, utility. So Cameron Green can bat where they need him, but where there's a little bit of ambiguity is, do they need an all-rounder?
Yes, now, that was the most interesting bit. I watched that interview as well, and he was very much if conditions dictate we need the all-rounder, which means Webster's not a lock, which means, basically they think if the pitch is looking spicy enough, they go in with the 3 quicks and a little extra batting.
I wonder whether it might be, and this is a little bit cynical of me, but I ponder whether if Boland plays, they'll trust his body for the 5 days. If it went 5 days, they would trust his body enough to go in without a 4th seamer. And if it's Hazelwood, they might take out insurance with Webster. I wonder whether that might come into... I'm not saying that Hazelwood is fully fit. There's no dramas with his fitness. He was very resilient in the previous summer, playing all 7 test matches. But when you look at the span of history with him...
Hazelwood has been fully fit a bunch of times before and broken down.
And broken down
early. I think this
early
is the
in
other
series.
thing is he's early in test matches. He's obviously this can happen to any bowler at any time, but you get bowlers who get sore at the back of the 4th day when they've been toiling, and you get bowlers who go after 4 overs on morning 1, and Hazelwood has been that bowler a number of times now.
Yeah. So there's that. There's Bowl and Hazelwood, that'll continue to percolate
forever.
How on earth are they going to work that out? That's the 51-49. But
fake moustaches. Get them both to bowl, but both wearing the same fake moustache.
Yeah, you can make perfectly compelling cases either way. And then there's the Josh Inglis piece to this. He talks about guys coming over from India. Well, he must be talking about Inglis. If they didn't go with Webster, does Inglis slot in at 6? I don't think that's mad. I think that's a great selection in some respects. I'm long on Inglis. I love Inglis. I just sort of feel like that. I can see that being, and in that scenario, you could tweak a bit further if you wanted to, and back Green at 6 and Inglis at 3. Although I think they'd be more inclined to back Green at 3 in that scenario. But still, they're the types of options. And the name you don't really hear talked about in this selection round, I don't think, is Constas. I just don't think they're playing him. I think Labuschagne is opening and Constas will open in Barbados. I think they're kind of at peace with the idea of this is the grand final and that's round one. And the grand final, you play your big bodies and your experienced campaigners, and round one you can play the kids. Something like that. Does that feel about right to you?
I think the analogy holds to that extent. I mean, McDonald runs the usual line where he says every test match we try to play our best team. Every test match is just as important, and so on. And like, yes, Andrew, okay, yes, true to a point, but it's also not true to a point, which is that you have to do forward planning. You have to look to what is happening next at some point, and in this match you don't. In this match you have to put out the most experienced kind of team. So look, it's a single game thing, right? It's such a dice roll. You could pick Marnus, he could make a pair opening. That's it. Everybody's mad. You could pick Constas and he could do the same thing. He nicks off for 3 and he smacks one to deep mid wicket on 7 in the second innings. And everyone says he's too young, he's an idiot, you shouldn't have picked him, you're all dumb. Like, you don't have enough time to be proven right. You've just got to take a punt and it may or may not come off. So you play to your averages. Labuschagne's not in good form-ish, but he knows how to play in England. He's been there enough times that he's maybe less likely to be daunted by proceedings, by having to walk out at Lords and cope with the moment as well, even though Constas coped with the moment on Boxing Day fine. Bit different away from home, having had all this time to think about it. It's like Boxing Day, he basically didn't have time to think about it. He just went out and did it. He had nothing to lose, whereas now he does have something to lose.
Like, this is the good thing about the World Test Championship cycle, that there is a focal. I mean, some tests are bigger than others, to badly quote Morrissey. This is by definition bigger, and that's a good thing. So let's work in that realm. Let's not work in the let's get the 4 points type vibes.
Yeah,
and I'm sure McDonald thinks that too. That's just a line for the sake of the interview. But yeah, anyway, that's playing out next week. Just as an aside before we move on, the ticket sales for the Oz-England test matches, the Ashes test matches, have been extraordinary overnight. Reminds me a bit of 06-07, Like 06-07, there was a bit of chaos, I remember, at the time, around people not being able to get through to the ticket agency, and days 1, 2 and 3, I think, selling out at Melbourne, and the same happened at Adelaide and Sydney. If it's record sales, by definition, they must have done something similar to that again. So we could be up for record crowds for 2 summers in a row. We probably should be.
Yeah.
Perth will be interesting. I mean, we've never really had that test at Perth Stadium yet. I know last year when India were there that the numbers were healthier, but we yet to really see Perth Stadium.
They were healthier, but a lot of that was travelling support. A lot of Indian supporters came because that's the shortest flight to get to an Australian test match from India. Yeah. So there were a lot who came in for that, and probably, anecdotally, it felt like more than half were Indian supporters last year, some of whom would be residents, but a lot of whom weren't.
But either way, they'll be supported by the fact that the WACA only held 20. So provided they get more than that, and there was no Perth test last time around, but you go back to when the WACA was the venue, they'll get a higher attendance there. The question is,
they'll get a higher attendance. It doesn't look any good. Because you can put 30 in the Perth Stadium and it still looks like shit.
Yeah,
because it seats 60, right? It still feels empty at half full. It's got that MCG problem. Put 50,000 in the MCG and it doesn't look full. So and it doesn't feel full. So you want that atmosphere. You want a Scorchers game atmosphere at the Test match. You want 60,000, and we've had such an elaborate array of excuses from the staunch Perth defenders over the last few years about why they couldn't possibly attend any of the days of any of the Test matches that were scheduled in Perth for various reasons. This is the one where you've got to pull your finger out, Perth. This is the one where there's not going to be any excuses about the quality of the contest or the day of the week or the time of the year or school holidays or Damien Oliver's barbecue or whatever it is. You've got to show up.
Yeah. Yeah, and the JL stuff's well in the rear vision mirror as well. Yeah, I think they will do well there, by the way. It was more a point of interest that there'll be potentially the chance to sell out, days maybe 1, 2 and 3 at all the venues, and then we're talking about gigantic crowd numbers that'll outstrip the Border Gavaskar, which was the record from last year. So that's all good news.
Maybe could they do some sort of combo with the new Perth Bears outfit in the rugby league? Because I know the NRL's been talking up 200,000 Bears supporters supposedly are going to sign up and travel to Perth every other week to go and see them play. So if they could get the Bears down I don't know, maybe do warm-ups with the Australian team, get the get the oval ball out, do some passing drills, something like that, rather than kicking the Sharon. I mean, if Bears hype is all that it's being made out to be by Volandis and co, then people are definitely going to come down to catch a glimpse of the Bears.
I'm sure that with the attendances for NRL in Sydney being so modest that they're going to get massive crowds to Perth. Good luck with that, guys. Back to the WTCF. South Africa are playing Zim starting today, so we're recording before the first ball is bowled. That's down at Arundel. I'd love to be there. But
no one's allowed to be there. They're not letting crowds in.
They are, but it's via members.
You've got to be a member, though.
Yeah, I kind of get it because of the way the way that bowl works. There's only really seating in one bit of it, and they will get all their members coming. So I understand. I mean, it would be I get why they've been forced into this situation, but it is of interest that it is more challenging than usual.
Neil Manthorpe wrote about it during the week, and because he was trying to find out what was going on, and he was told by Arundel that it was the ECB's decision, and by the Zimbabweans that it was an ICC regulation, and couldn't get anybody to confirm what actual bit of what regulation said that this was the case. So basically he was being fed a line by every party involved, couldn't give him a straight line about it. There was no straight answer to it, and it does seem absurd that you've got a couple of international teams playing, and not only is it not going to have proper status as an international match because 53 people are going to play in it, but you also can't go down and just have a look, watch them bowl, watch them bat.
Squeeze the people in. I saw a beautiful photograph of Arundel I'm reading Max Bonnell's book at the moment about the 1964 Ashes, which is a great read. I'll feature it on Book Club as soon as I can get around to organising an interview with him. But there's a photograph from the Duke of Norfolk's game from 64 where like they're piled in, rows and rows of people squeezed in as it used to be before, OC health and safety or whatever it is, and understandably that they won't be doing that this week. Anyway, that game's at Arundel. Rabada will be there. He did his first media post the bag ban when leaving for England. He was contrite, as he has been, and clearly wants to get on with it. But then he got asked the obvious questions about sledging and kind of said that, it gets the best out of him and he knows they come hard. And then one headline's like he's daring Australia to sledge him. Surely there's not much use in sledging Kagiso Rabada. He is a fierce competitor. Maybe he's one of these cricketers that the best thing they can do is just shut up and not provide him anything other than the ball and the bat in front of him. I just don't sense that getting into a blue with Rabada ends well for Australia.
I'm also curious about what you could actually sledge him about. You got a 30-day ban for a rec drug strike. Okay, so what? I mean, who among the ranks of professional athletes has not had a little dabble in something they shouldn't have at some point, who in broader society hasn't? Some people, but certainly a lot on the other side of the ledger. What are you going to get into him about? I hear you had a fun night out in Durban at a dubious nightclub. I hear you enjoyed a Jamie XX remix more than you may otherwise have done in a different state of mind. Like, what's the, it's not the 1950s. It's not like this speaks to a major failing of moral character. It's not reefer madness. It's not like you're going to be out there breaking into houses and stealing VCRs. Like, there's nothing to sledge about. Like,
they might go the other way. They could be like, have you been on Reddit? If you had a 3 for 100 while you're here, they might go the other way and try and collaborate with him. I doubt that because they're all good.
Or just distract him with possibility. Have you gotten to the research chems at all? Any of the sort of edge case psychedelics, your 2CT series, anything like that? Anything with a 14-hour half-life? I don't know. What are you going to... It just doesn't seem to be any actual material there to use. No, so I feel this Australian team goes a bit more for discretion than some in the past.
This is a lot different to the teams that we first covered when we were doing the Aussie team. That's fairly certain. So that's South Africa. Rabada's here. They're all at Arundel. What a lovely week they'll have, or 3 days at least. And when they get back to London, they'll be greeted by the sight of Stuart Broad in a Proteas tracksuit. I love this story. This story started with Stuart Broad to work for Cricket South Africa, and in about 3 hours' time, it was clarified he's attending one training session next Monday as their bowling consultant. So he's not doing the full week, or he'll be commentating, I presume. He's doing a day with them. Yeah. And of course, it's so much better that it's Broad with all the history with Australia, proper sort of Broad pantomime stuff. it'll be brilliant. I'll tell you what, there will be people down at the nets watching it. I'll be there with my camera. I'm sure you will be as well. Like, it'll be bloody interesting seeing him go through his paces. But yeah, Broad, Australia, major game at Lords. It's all perfect for a good game.
And imagine like the scenes if it's, Big Marco nicking off the 10th wicket in the fourth innings with 10 runs left to win. And Stuart Broad will be out there in the huddle jumping up and down, I'm sure. How does Shukri Conrad feel about it, though? This doesn't seem like commitment to the cause. Popping in for a one-day coaching deal. Is that all that Cricket South Africa could afford until the SA20 cash revenue comes through? What are they... what are you going to learn from a day?
Well, it's a good point, though. They probably did this deal when Broad was out commentating on the SA20, right? Like, he's there for a couple of months or a month for that tournament. It stands to reason that relationship is there. Jeff, we've got a lot to get through in segment 2, picking up with India and their arrival in England as well. Before we do so, a word for our principal partners on season 18. We're so proud to have them with us all the way through 2025. Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. Through June, what we're doing is we're telling stories of the work that they do to give a sense of what it means when we talk about superannuation insurance. So one of their lawyers, Craig, recently assisted a client who was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and as her condition deteriorated, she was unable to continue working her usual office job. But when she tried to claim her TPD benefit and income protection benefits, the insurer pushed back. They actually alleged that because she had attended her GP with symptoms before taking out the policy, that they're entitled to cancel her policy, would you believe? So this is the sort of stuff that can happen to people out there, right? When injury or illness intervenes, you try and access your insurance. So together with Craig, with Maurice Blackburn, and working with the insurer, well, taking on the insurer essentially, they agreed to withdraw those allegations, to pay her the lump sum benefit of $300,000, and she's now entitled to a monthly income protection benefit as well. So having Maurice Blackburn on her side, in her corner at that time of need, has proved essential to getting that payment in the short term and having that ongoing payment and benefit as well, which, should you be in need of it, it would be can you imagine a scenario where you couldn't access that owing to having your claim knocked back on those spurious terms? So this is the kind of work they do. Like
if you've got a chronic illness, but you should never have inquired about any of the symptoms before, even if you didn't have a diagnosis.
Imagine.
These are the kinds of spurious grounds that insurers do try to use at times. So it pays to have someone on your side who knows the ropes and who's not afraid of taking them on. So we're glad to be associated with them. Their information's in the show notes. Check them out if you need legal support in Australia.